Welcome back to our January 27th Board of Commissioners meeting for the afternoon session. Looks like we have Ms. Wood and Ms. Nagels here. Mr. Mokrajski.
Thank you, Chair. I thought maybe I would just kick off this item. You may not know this, but today is Andrea Nagel's 12th anniversary in Lane County.
Congratulations.
And just recently, Inga Wood celebrated her 15th year anniversary with Lane County. We were, before you started here, reminiscing about all of the various things that we've been through over the years. I just started about 12 years ago with Lane County. I'm sure it's 35 to 40 contracts just in the 12 years that Andrew's been here. Add a few more to that for Inga. So I just wanted to make that recognition before we kick this item off, and of course, offer appreciation on behalf of Lane County for the great work of this team that has really sought to work collaboratively with all of our bargaining units, particularly leaning into interest-based bargaining, where we can come together and identify what our common interests are and create efficiency and effectiveness in this process of negotiating really important labor contracts. So thank you, Chair, for letting me say that. And I think, you can take it.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Chair Sennigan and Commissioners. We're happy to present to you today the tentative agreement between Lane County and the Lane County Association Local 626, also known as 626. The current collective bargaining agreement between Lane County and 626 expired on June 30th of 2025. The board previously authorized the county's bargaining team to enter into successor contract negotiations through the interest-based bargaining approach, as Steve was just talking about. With 626 and in accordance with the county's bargaining obligations under Oregon labor law. The board established overall priorities, goals, and objectives for the negotiation process, including but not limited to awareness of the county's overall budget constraints and structural funding gap, and focusing on creating long-term financial stability in the face of uncertain financial forecasts. The 626 bargaining team and the county bargaining team spent 2 days with the state conciliator to learn about the IBB process and approach this past spring. I mentioned this, this is actually our third time using interest-based bargaining with this specific unit, but we go through the training as members sometimes change on each team, so we go through that training to make sure everyone's up to speed on how to do IBB. As we have shared, interest-based collective bargaining focuses on interests, exploring options and building towards solutions together. This approach is in alignment with the county's core behavior focused on solutions. The board is being asked to approve the tentative agreement for successor contract ending June 30th, 2028, which is included in the packet. We won't go through all of the items, but I'll highlight a few things before Andrea talks about the financial things. Among the changes are, as of April 2nd, 2026, members of 626 will no longer be insured through the county's short-term disability program, as the benefit has largely been replaced by Oregon's paid family medical leave. Health insurance changes have been agreed that align with many of our other bargaining units and non-represented employees, including moving to generic preferred pharmacy benefits, increased deductibles for some plans, and increased out-of-pocket maximum for all plans. Employees will also be subject to a monthly tobacco use surcharge on their health plan contributions unless they participate in a cessation program. We made numerous other changes to clarify contract language, improve operational efficiencies, and ensure our employees are able to complete their duties safely and successfully. I'll turn it over to Andrea to walk through the financial impacts of the tentative agreement.
Thanks, Inga. As Inga mentioned, there is a summary of the items contained in your board packet. I will just highlight some of the economic pieces. To address market competitiveness, the 13 out of the 15 classifications that are represented by this unit will receive a market adjustment under this tentative agreement. 626, Local 626 is the only unit that represents here at the county what are referred to as 520 employees. So 520 employees are limited in the number of hours that they can work in a fiscal year, up to 520 hours. What we did during the negotiation process is to recognize those individuals, those 520s, that they primarily work for Public Works during the warmer months on the road, bridge, vegetation, and park crews. So to recognize this, we established a wage scale that outlined a process to incentivize individuals to return to these positions, hopefully each year, by receiving a wage scale adjustment when they return. For cost of living adjustments, that applies to all members of this unit. The tentative agreement provides in year one of the agreement for a 2.8% cost of living adjustment. That would be for fiscal year 25-26. For years 2 and 3 of the agreement, the cost of living adjustment will be based on the Consumer Price Index. And for this current round of negotiations, as well as with our other units, we are looking at the Consumer Price Index for urban consumers and the annual average of that in the West region. And for years 2 and 3, we've negotiated a range for the cost of living adjustment. So it's a 2% minimum cost of living adjustment that employees will receive and a 5% maximum. And again, it will depend on the Consumer Price Index range. These wage adjustments that I just described will be retroactive for the employees in this unit to the first full pay, pay period following July 1 of 2025. And that will be for those employees on the payroll on the date of the board's approval of this agreement. The employees in this bargaining unit provide services within the Public Works Department in the area of roads, solid waste, fleet services, and parks. These services are funded by a variety of sources, including fees, federal timber funds, car rental tax, state gas tax, transient room tax, and internal transfers. The total additional estimated cost for this 3-year contract is a range, again, based on the cost of living adjustments that I just explained, with a minimum of $5,749,569 to a maximum of $7,176,358, and that's over a 3-year period.
Really quick, we just would really like to thank 626 for their partnership through this process. Specifically, we would like to thank the 626 bargaining team, President Rob Winters, who sends his regrets. He wanted to be here today for this item and was originally scheduled to come in as it was his normal day off, but he got called in to work overtime. So he's currently working, so he may be watching virtually, but he wanted to send his apologies that he couldn't attend that today. Adrian Cave, who's the vice president, Whitney Schilling, the secretary, and Rick Keene, the chief steward for 626. I'd also like to thank the members of the county's bargaining team and staff who helped preparing and gathering information for the teams. It really is a team effort, especially during IBB. Andrea and I could not do our jobs without our team that we have. So obviously Andrea Nagels, Lance Inglett, Brett Henry, Christine Moody, James Trujillo, and Carrie Crabtree. And then a very special thanks. We actually had co-facilitators for this IBP process, Kristen Mayfair in our labor relations group, and then Andy Conrad, who went through the training with us and is now actually part of Admin Pro, volunteered to help co-facilitate. And it's a big job to facilitate IBB and keep us on all track. So big thank you to both Andy and Kristen for keeping us moving in that. 626 bargaining unit members have voted to ratify the tentative agreement. Both bargaining teams recommend approval and authorization to county staff to implement the proposed tentative agreement. And with that, we'll open up with any questions from the board.
Excellent. Well, what is the, any thoughts or comments, questions? Vice Chair Buck.
I just want to give a big thank you out to the team, the bargaining team, and of course, the local 626 workers who do a phenomenal job every single day. It's really great to hear that this is the 3rd time around with IBB, going really smoothly for the most part, and we hope to be able to do that with all of our bargaining teams at some point, but really appreciate the hard work. Thank you.
Yes, I completely agree. That's great news. We got another one into interest-based bargaining, so great. I'm also surprised you guys obviously started here in your teens, but that's another side. Okay, willing to entertain a motion?
All right.
Vice Chair Buck.
I move approval of Order 26-01-27-12 in the matter of approving the tentative agreement between Lane County and the Lane County Public Works Association Local 626.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Buck and a second by Commissioner Trieger to approve Order 2601-2712 in the matter of approving the tentative agreement between Lane County and the Lane County Public Works Association, Local 626. Any discussion to the item? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Great work once again. We appreciate it.
Good job, team.
And 626 speaks very highly of you as well. Okay, back to our county administrator to kick off our legislative committee update.
Thanks, Chair. We do these regularly. It's an update on, here, we're going to talk about the short session that we're headed into, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Mokrahusky. Chair,
Yes.
Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. I'm Steve Adams, the Policy Director, joined by Ms. Vanessa Cornwell, our Intergovernmental Affairs Manager, and this is our typically kind of quarterly update for you. Monday begins the legislative session here in Oregon, the short session, and we do want to focus the majority of our time with you today on the short session coming up, but I do want to just follow up on some of the federal activities that we briefed you on 2 weeks ago, Thursday, I think it was, the 15th of January for the budget kickoff. So at that time, we saw appropriations packages for the federal agencies moving through Congress. There was some turbulence, but we saw even as late as last week, the House passed the remainder of the appropriations bills in one large package. There were they were essentially, the House took them up in two. They put the Department of Homeland Security as one vote, and they put everything else that was on the table into the other vote, and those moved. The House did combine those as a single bill and send it to the Senate. And so following the events of the weekend, I think the outlook for the passage of those appropriations bills by the end of this week, Friday, the 30th of June, is when the current continuing resolution expires. We were thinking Friday, this is a done deal, and we're going to avoid a partial government shutdown. It's increasingly likely that we are, as we're reading the news and trying to understand what the Senate's likely to do, but there are a significant number of senators who are indicating that they will not support a cloture vote to move those forward. So conversations are moving forward now, and we'll, of course, keep you apprised. So the remainder of appropriations that have yet to be done is the Department of Homeland Security, the defense budget, labor, health and human services, and education, and of course that pot funds many of our healthcare operations, transportation and HUD, financial and general government, and then the national security apparatus. So those are the pieces that have yet to be. Will we see another stopgap continuing resolution? That could happen. The House is out of session, however, so we may see a partial government shutdown at the end of this week. We will keep you apprised of those activities. I noted that the county administrator updated you on the SRS item and the ONC counties item that was included within the interior appropriations. And indeed, that was new news to us. We weren't tracking that as it went through, and we're very glad to see that. Is really excellent work by our delegation and the ONC counties to move that piece forward. We will be wanting to bring that forward into our efforts at the federal level moving forward, because that language was tied specifically to the fiscal 26 interior appropriations, and we'll need to kind of be vigilant to try to make sure that that kind of continues as a status quo in future funding cycles. So I think that's a level set of where we are at the federal level, bringing you up to speed from the past 2 weeks. And I'm going to turn it to my colleague, Ms. Cornwall, to set the stage for the legislative session.
Yes, thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. For the record, Vanessa Cornwall here to talk about some of the things that we can expect for the short session and what the Legislative Committee discussed during the previous meeting and our first quarterly meeting on January 9th. So as Mr. Adams mentioned, the short session begins next week, and it is going to be 35 days of a lot of work that the legislature must get done. Lawmakers will concentrate on several key priorities, including unfinished business from the previous session, and namely, rebalancing the state budget to address shortfalls caused by federal changes in H.R. 1. Much of this work will hinge on next week's revenue forecast slated for Wednesday. So there's still quite a bit unknown, but we'll have a better idea of what we can expect following that. In addition, the legislature will begin advancing Governor Kotek's prosperity roadmap and the work of the Prosperity Council, chaired by former Senator Tim Knopp, which aims to expand economic development opportunities and drive economic growth. Transportation funding will also be a major focus, particularly issues with the revenue-raising portions of the previously passed transportation bill. That was a highlight of the special session. Late last year, ODOT is facing some substantial cost challenges, so the legislators must identify solutions to fund operations, maintenance, and respond to potential impacts from severe weather. From what I understand, the current plan revolves around introducing legislation to move the transportation funding referendum to the May ballot, while continuing negotiations until a funding agreement is reached. And in preparation for this session, our legislative committee held its first meeting, and during that meeting, we reviewed and refined the legislative priorities and principles, which you should see in your agenda packet, based on emergent state and federal issues. We are seeking board action on leading with that advocacy. The Legislative Committee approved some priorities to push in the 2026 session, including expanded TLT use and flexibility, battery and producer responsibility, and budget defense. And of course, along with that, we will work closely with our partners to ensure that the county's ability to deliver essential services, including public safety, housing, and emergency shelter, is not in danger. We also discussed a particular piece of legislation that our esteemed county council worked on and flagged, which is the Cannabis Omnibus, which will be introduced by Representative Wallen. I will defer to Mr. Bovet to continue that conversation and discuss potential next steps.
I wasn't expecting this, but thank you for the opportunity. So the Cannabis Omnibus has 12 components. It's 11 of them are basically non-monetary. They are being reviewed by lawyers representing the hemp and marijuana industries currently. I've given them a due date of tomorrow to get me back red lines. I won't bore you with all the details of this. This is keeping our cannabis programs functional. The 11th component of it, one of the 12, actually goes back to 2018, where we had an agreement with legislators of the Joint Cannabis Committee to make sure that we took off the top of cannabis tax revenues sufficient funds to provide for law enforcement and victim services for going after essentially the cartel grows that were plaguing at that time Southwest Oregon primarily, but now they plague us and a few others. So the proposal right now is to have the I don't want to call it the skim, but that's what it is, off the top, fully fund the IMMEGP, that grant program, which funds 3 sheriff's deputies here in Lane County. There's a tension there because because if anything you take off the top affects further distributees, in this case, the burn funding. And so the proposed legislation also would move all intoxicating hemp products behind the counter at OLCC stores and subject that to 17% sales tax. So the question is, what is the impact? What is the real impact? And we won't know that until it occurs. But I'm subject to direction from the board on especially that particular item, because if you'd prefer that we prioritize the burn funding and not impact that at all, I will take your marching orders. That would probably mean we would lose the IMMEGP statewide, which would be of concern to me, but I understand the importance of burn funding as well. Generally, a burn funding is raising about $180 million per biennium. This would impact it by about 10%. And again, it's going back to the deal struck in 2018, but I'm subject to your marching orders. So that's one issue. You want me to mention the other bill, Vanessa? There's another bill we have on the Senate side that would essentially give counties more control over the burn money itself, which is legislation we proposed twice now. Instead, the legislature essentially took away the direct authority of the Oversight Committee created by Measure 110 and gave that and kept that authority within OHA. However, we haven't seen a whole lot of local control. And so I can't promise you that that bill will move forward, but if the board is comfortable with us pushing that forward again, we'll probably have a hearing in Senate Judiciary, but I'm not sure the legislature is ready to change that. My goal, of course, is local control because to quote a famous county judge from many years ago, if you've seen one Oregon county, you've seen one Oregon county. And of course, resources and needs vary from county to county. And to be honest, I trust this board more with how to spend burn money than a board sitting in Salem that doesn't really know Lane County. So that will be a bipartisan bill introduced in the Senate. The other bill I mentioned, the Cannabis Omnibus, will be a bipartisan bill introduced in the House. Is going to economic development. So I'm subject to I think I sent you an email on it. I'm subject to your direction on either of those, really. But those are the only 2 bills I have any involvement with this session. I'm trying to, quite frankly, walk away from all my legislative obligations. And mostly successful, but not quite there yet.
So I think now we're ready to pause and see if you might have any questions or comments tied to what we just discussed.
And if I may, Chair, just to preface that, I really want to acknowledge, for anyone looking at the packet, the principles and priorities document looks very extensively marked up, and that really reflects a very careful editing on the part of Ms. Cornwall. So she, I think, heard Commissioner Lovell's concern in our last appearance that we had pandemic era priorities, and we did. There were things that were lingering in here. So we took a really hard look at what was in the document and worked, and I won't say we because it really was Ms. Cornwall working closely with each of our departments to go through and refine that. So I think you'll see it looks like, you know, a massive rewrite, but in fact, it's a significant cleanup.
Excellent. Well, that's greatly appreciated. And while we're giving you thanks, I just want to say thanks for doing this and dealing with all the random things I send you and ask you about. So I sure appreciate all your time. To the board, anybody have any questions on our legislative update? I had one. I know I got to find it again because there are some extensive changes here. Anybody else? No, everything looks good. One of mine was related to LMD. Support cost recovery efforts within Land Management Division. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Chair, I believe that's going to be a more blanket guidance principle for any sort of state legislative direction around land use processes that require work on the part of staff. So land management, as you know, here in Wayne County, and I suspect this is true in many Oregon counties, it's an enterprise fund, right, that we don't subsidize. Other counties may, in fact, subsidize with general fund. I think as a general principle, we would be particularly concerned about bills that might require extensive work on behalf of Land Management Division without a way for us to recover the costs associated with that. And so I believe that to be the intent of that proposed principle.
Got it. Okay, great. Okay, well, it seems like we have a lot of questions here. If we're willing to pass an order.
Well, Commissioners,
Yes.
one more item before we move on to potential passage. We do want to address that the Legislative Committee also discussed the board assignment from August, and I will hand it over to our policy director to discuss more on that.
We did, and thank you, Ms. Cornwall. And Chair, we did receive an assignment last year, have staff help the board to update and establish procedures in our legislative priorities to better inform the board on positions and up to the minute decisions our policy team is making during sessions. And so we did indeed review that conversation with the Legislative Committee to really just kind of understand how the lobby team can be more effective in our communications back to the board and to our management team here. I think there's we appreciated the overall sentiment from the Legislative Committee that we are quite busy during the throes of a legislative session. In fact, we don't even have our bills for next week yet. We're working from 2 summary documents of just titles and bill numbers. So we don't have that in session begins sine die on Monday. So we're trying to get a sense of what that looks like. We had the sense, I think some of the conversation really turned around assisting any of our members on the board to really identify bills of interest to them and to ensure that we can automate the tracking that's available in OLIS to see which of those bills are happening. And we would be delighted to come help any member of the board that would like that assistance. And then to just kind of follow along in real time. Really, I think we hear from our department directors that that's in fact what they do as well. And so they're just checking in with us when they see that's a bill I care about, it's due up tomorrow. I want to make sure that we're going to submit testimony, for instance, in that sort of conversation. So we wanted to come back with that sense of the Legislative Committee. We are your staff, however, and we're here to take your direction in terms of how you would like us to update you.
Commissioner Lovell.
Thank you, Chair. I think, thank you, Mr. Adams, for all that information, and for Vanessa for all your hard work. You did a lot of work on this, so I appreciate you squeezing that into your busy time frame. But I also want to come back to the board order direction, and that board order direction stemmed from some not necessarily legislative priorities that we had established, but ones that we moved within the moment to do that just seemed to be not communicated. So my question is if we decide to do something, for example, super site or do something of that nature, how is that information going to get to the board in a timely fashion instead of just to the 2 board members that are on the Legislative Committee?
Chair, Commissioner, we can absolutely provide, if we know of your interest in a particular piece of legislation, if you are seeing legislative activity around that, you can always proactively reach out to us to, and ask that you want to be briefed on a particular piece of legislation. We do that all the time with members of the board and with directors as well across county governments. We try to provide that level of situational awareness for everyone we can. I will tell you that, in my experience in the legislative process, the importance of being in the hallways in Salem of talking to members, talking to other lobbyists is invaluable. Having that ability to be present there and being able to soak up the situational awareness is so integral to the success of the effort to try to move legislation along successfully. So I'm obviously often more here in Eugene. Vanessa's almost entirely in Salem throughout session. I welcome any sort of communication to us, and particularly to me, if you have concerns or if you have questions about the process, and we will try to relay that to you. We're going to take broad direction. This is the point of the Principles and Priorities document, is to really fully understand what your objectives are, and we're going to work every possible angle we can to try to achieve those objectives, and that's what we do. And the importance of this document is really to that point. It guides us in terms of what we do and how to make split-second decisions.
Mr. Farr.
Thanks. I'm looking to Commissioner Lovell to see if that came close to answering, but I'm going to take a stab at something right now. We've always had a very good, at least very good, probably excellent representation in Salem by staff. I think my feeling is today we have a stronger representation than we've ever had, quite frankly. And I think that being in the hallways, our presence in the hallways, gives us a little bit of an insight, sometimes ahead of the curve. And that you try to get ahead of the curve, but in those hallways, and now the hallways are open back up again, I guess, it's hard to stay ahead of the curve because things do happen very, very quickly. But what has been frustrating to me, I served in the legislature. I was a Republican. We had a 35-25 majority in the House at the time. And communication goes on party lines. It does. And there's not much avoiding that. So if you happen to be in a county that has all Democrats in there, the Democrats tend to give their information to people who they feel are in partisanship with them. It's hard to get around that, and until we have a nonpartisan legislature, that's the way it's going to be, which makes it more difficult for you to present the information on an even-handed level. You know, the opinions of Republicans and Democrats, even though one may, at any one time, one has the edge in the legislature, both opinions have got to be forwarded, and both of the efforts need to be moved forward, so that we as a nonpartisan Board of County Commissioners, which we are, nonpartisan, we're a nonpartisan Board of County Commissioners, we get an even representation from Democrat, Republican, and any other party that may happen to be represented up there, which is rare that it would be any other party. Bob Jensen may have been the last one, and that was a long time ago, and he was Republican, Democrat, and unaffiliated. So that being said, it makes your job more difficult to get all of the information that each one of us on the Board of Commissioners would like to hear. If we happen to have a close relationship with a legislator, for whatever reason it may be, we're going to get a lot of information from that legislator. And there's no getting around that. If a senator happens to be a neighbor of mine, then I may hear from that senator fairly regularly. If a state representative happens to be a neighbor of yours, then conversely, that may be the information. But your job, that makes your job more difficult in making sure that all of the information is passed along. And I'm here to say that I've never seen it been brought forward at as high a level as I see it today. And Vanessa, the work you've done on this, look at all the green and yellow. I love the colors you chose, by the way, green and yellow. That represents a lot of work. And I believe that you've been responsive to things that you've heard from this board in redesigning, rewriting this what do we call it? It's the legislative principles document. So that said, I'm beyond satisfied with the work that you're doing in the legislature. I love it. I think you call on us when you need help from the nonpartisan Board of County Commissioners. Did I say that we're nonpartisan? Have I mentioned that? Okay. Then that being said, thank you for doing that. And I recognize the difficulty that you're under. And you're going to miss some shots from time to time because those hallways are crowded. And if you're not sitting in front of hearing room F and things are happening in hearing room A, then you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. So well done. And again, I'll say this. And Rob, you've been around the legislature a long time. I don't know that you've ever seen a stronger representation from any county than we have from this county right now in the legislature. So thank you for that. Now, when I was there, we didn't have short sessions. We had special sessions instead. And that was, I like the current process that's being used, having a short session, because it takes the pressure off the regular session. In 2003, we sine-died in August. They don't do that anymore, do they? So again, it's a moving target, and you do a better job than I've seen happen at Lane County and probably in any other county on hitting that moving target. So thank you.
Mr. Buck?
Well, let's go here, as I'm ready for a motion, but I want to make sure we have
Yeah,
discussion.
absolutely. Commissioner Trigger.
Thank you. Thank you for the work. Thank you for bringing it forward. I just want to, one of the things we talked about in the Ledge Committee that I want to mention, and I also want to clarify, the work of the Legislative Committee, we don't review individual bills there. In fact, we don't, as a committee, have unique insight or extra access to information about bills different from any individual commissioner can avail themselves in the ways you've mentioned, or that we get from you as a body in these presentations. What we do is we use this guiding principles document to say, is this still right? Is this still on track? Is it updated with, as you've mentioned, pulling things off that are not in the zeitgeist anymore, putting things on that are opportunities that staff's brought. And again, as you can tell when you look through this document, it is across the organization. And to that, I want to mention, as Commissioner Farr said, we have better representation than ever in that we also have some both elected and appointed leadership in this organization that we haven't historically had, that is highly regarded and used as a resource and are very effective part of the lobbying team, if you will, in our assessor, who is highly regarded in her statewide association, as well as recognized as representing Lane County's unique needs. Our DA is active with the DA's association. Our appointed Director of Health and Human Services has become an incredibly respected and valued voice with legislators of all parties. And so as just some examples, and so what the Legislative Committee work is to really dive into this document in a way we don't here. We don't examine, we don't get bills or drafts or weigh in on those. And we were reminded at the last Legislative Committee, in fact, that this whole concept of having a principles and priorities document was exactly to make our lobbying team more effective, to give them the nimbleness they needed and know they were operating within board direction. And it was a request made and originally established by our previous Ledge Affairs Director, Alex Kyler, because he was a one-man band and overwhelmed and didn't want to get out over the skis of the commissioners, but also knew there were opportunities we were leaving on the table because he didn't have enough guidance. So it was an attempt to be not so prescriptive that we missed opportunity, but not so broad that he didn't feel confident he was operating under the direction of the board. And this is especially important in the short session because as quickly as things move in a regular session, they move even more quickly in the short session. Fewer bills, though, so a little easier, And we heard from some of our representatives that there may be a bill introduced soon to limit the number of bills that can be introduced even in a long session, because it's just too much for anyone to track. So I really have appreciated since I joined this board and this whole method of managing our legislative work by having this overarching principles and priorities document. It helps all of us. I think it helps department directors, and it certainly helps the two of you plus our contract lobbyists to know we're sort of on the right track. But ultimately what this is legislative advocacy, which means it ends up in the hands of legislators, and legislators actually get to decide what kinds of amendments get made, which bills move out of committees and which don't. Commissioners don't decide that. We're just there to advocate for these guiding principles and priorities as commissioners, and then you all are there to operationalize that guidance. So thank you for doing that so ably, and it's just a great reminder of how that all works. And you know, it's quite evident that commissioners aren't the ones writing the legislation and voting on it, because if we were, we wouldn't be in a lot of the pickles that we're finding ourselves in these days around mandates and resources and the misalignment. So thank you for your work, fully supportive of what's in front of us today in the form of an order. Thank you.
Okay, well, yeah, just a couple of things. And Commissioner Farr, you brought up some good points. And I suppose that's why I don't hear much from our state legislators being unaffiliated. Nobody wants to talk to me. I'm joking, but having those relationships is huge because I've really worked hard to bring our coastal area in and worked with Vanessa's buddy Boomer Wright. And, we got some great things done with Mapleton and those kind of things. And that was that relationship. And, as chief of staff, Holly, she's fantastic. She keeps me in the loop on things. We've just built that kind of relationship. So that's very, very helpful. And, as he is retiring, we'll have to start over again, but we can do that. And just really quick, a reminder, I know we move fast at the state legislative level, and you have to, but it is frustrating when you hear about a direction we headed from somebody else other than staff after things have been done. So if we could do anything, it would just be improve that communication when, hey, we are going off our legislative priorities, which is great, I agree, and there's been a bunch of good work done there. But just a quick, hey, this is what's going on, like it or not, and then at least you know, because you don't like to hear things from other people. And I think that's kind of where some of the angst is from. And with that, thank you for all the hard work. I appreciate it, and we'll be back in there. I think we're ready for an order.
Okay.
Actually, Chair, if I may add
Yes,
one
absolutely.
last thing.
Commissioner,
There are
real
things
quick.
that happen up there,
How's the
Chair,
beer?
that aren't in the legislature. For instance, we do have the LGAC committee, which works predominantly with the department heads as opposed to the legislature. The legislature passes the policies and the laws, and the department heads juggle it and deal with it. Commissioner Trieger mentioned that Director Gray is integral. Director Gray has a loud voice on the LGAC committee. And at the last meeting, Ebony Clark was there, Sejal Hathi was there, listening straight to the ears and standing face to face with both me and with Director Gray, listening, and in my experience already paying attention to what is happening at the county level. Sometimes the legislature acts on its own, always has, always will, but the department heads have a daily job to do, and that's where a lot of times the action happens, is with the department heads and or the directors, and we have some inroads there, and so I think what's happening in Salem is we have a well-rounded approach that I just, once again, I love seeing the two of you in those hallways, and it really is. It's comforting for me to know that you're on the job, because it makes our job a lot easier.
Absolutely. I think we might be ready for order this time.
Very good. I'll move approval of Order 26-01-27-13 in the matter of adopting the January 2026 Legislative Principles and Priorities document.
Second?
We have a motion made by Vice Chair Buck and seconded by Commissioner Trieger to approve Order 26-01-27-13 in the matter of adopting the January 2026 Legislative Priorities document. Need discussion to the motion? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimous. Okay. Thank you very much, policy team. It's greatly appreciated. Yes. Okay, so we did county administrator announcements. We are now on to commissioners' business. Do we have any announcements from commissioners? Commissioner Farr.
Can I make a personal announcement?
Of course.
Well, two. We have 4 grandchildren with 4 birthdays in about 4 weeks' time, so it's a pretty wonderful thing. That's all I'll say about that, but if you want to come to Putters on Saturday, one of the biggest, best birthday parties you'll ever see in your life, bring your earplugs. The second is that once again, a personal announcement that Urinetown opened at Very Little Theater. It's a pretty widely acclaimed play that was on Broadway, I think, for 3 years, maybe on Broadway. And it is starring Debbie Farr. Not starring, she has a principal role, but not a starring role. If you have a chance to see it, I think it's mainly sold out, but it's a good show. Then, if this is the appropriate time, I'll mention 2 committees that I serve on, Chair, or should we wait on that?
It's up, yeah, go ahead.
The first one is MWMC, Metropolitan Wastewater Management Commission. It's been around since 1977. It's a cooperation, as you all know, between Lane County, City of Eugene, and City of Springfield, and it's one of the better run organizations you'll see absolutely nationally. And we're currently, we have 1 member of the, the commission are 2 members from the City of Eugene, 2 from Lane County, and 2 from Springfield, 1 elected official and 1 appointed official. And our appointed official, Bill Inge, has been there for 20 years and recently resigned. And we're in the process of reappointing a Lane County at-large position that's a non-elected official. So we're in the process right now. It's a little bit unclear since it's been so long since we did this, what the process is, but I'm presuming that we'll get a recommendation as to a recommended party to this Board of Commissioners, and we will make the decision among us who is appointed. We should expect that in the next couple of weeks. The work that's going on there ongoing is the regular work of taking dirty water, making it clean, and putting it back in the river, which we do very, very well. But significantly, analyzing how broad our scope of service can be, should be, or possibly would be. And you've heard that Cresswell is at a moratorium stage in building because they have 0 capacity as far as extra wastewater treatment. So that process is ongoing. This board will be integral in that discussion, that decision-making. Commissioner Buck's been in just about every single one of those meetings, and they're extensive. And the answers aren't evident as to how to do it. We've also been approached recently by the City of Junction City because they're close to a moratorium stage on building in Junction City because of they're discharging into, what's the name of that little creek that it goes into?
Flat Creek.
Flat Creek. And it's pretty dry in the summer, and so it's not a particularly healthy situation. And our Metropolitan Wastewater Treatment Facility is one of the finest in the nation, stays ahead of the curve at all times. And if it can be expanded regionally, I'm in favor of trying to find a way to do that if it's entirely possible without destabilizing the system as it exists, because we have a very stable system. Ongoing discussions that we're seeing on that. And then the last one is on, I mentioned the Local Government Advisory Committee, which is the Oregon Health Authority and Association of Oregon Counties. Dr. Pinels, who is the interpreter of the Mink-Bowman Act, gave us a presentation last Friday. It was a pretty wonderful presentation. She's remote, she doesn't live here, and she has great depth and insights. And a lot of the things that Dr. Pinels outlines are things that really we don't have answers to in Oregon, like who gets priority in the state hospital. Well, the federal law requires that people who are in need of I'm trying to think of the exact term, but it's people who aren't there for treatment. They're there for preparation for aid and assist. Thank you. And there's not very much that we can do about it. Meanwhile, people who do need treatment are going untreated, and that is a dilemma that we have in Oregon. Is that our state hospital is absolutely inundated, and this is Dr. Pinel's report, that it's inundated with counties sending more people than the state hospital can handle simply for aid and assist. And people are being returned to the community without having any treatment at all, and quite often returned to the community before, at a time after their sentence would have been completed anyway, so there's no further jurisdictional action, judicial action. So it's a tough dilemma, but it's happening at the LGAC. Eve Gray is no small part of that discussion. Marcus Vihar is one of the superstars in the discussions that we have, and Lane County is very well represented there. Keep an eye and ear on that, because as I mentioned, Sejal Hathi is there for just about every single meeting. She is the head of OHA, and also Ebony Clark, who is the head of Oregon Housing Community Services, is at just about every meeting, as well as Fairbore's Pak Saresht, who recently resigned as the Department of Human Services head. Not resigned, he retired, had a long, long career. So stay tuned to that. Commissioner Trieger attends that meeting from time to time, and from time to time, participates, and I can never say no when you raise your hand, Lori. So, but it's a good meeting to listen to because it isn't things that you'll hear from our legislative representation. It's things that happen in the departments outside of the Capitol building. With that, that's probably a little bit more than you wanted to hear. A number of other things that happened. We received a report on rural health programs in the state of Oregon, and a number of other prioritizations on the regional coordination of grant money that's being passed down by the state that is bypassing the county in the decision making. You'll hear more about that as it becomes necessary to hear about it. So a little more than you needed to hear perhaps, but it is important to know that we are well represented there.
All great information, Commissioner Farr. Thank you. Anybody else?
Are we doing committee reports?
Well, we're still on announcements. We ran a little wild on that one.
I don't have an announcement, but I'll have a committee report when it's time.
Okay. Commissioner comments, remonstrance? Anybody?
Thank you.
Commissioner
I think I just do want to acknowledge, I'm not going to opine on it, but I just want to acknowledge there's an awful lot going on, and that when we come to the dais, often we come after a lunch break, we may have gotten messages about personal, geopolitical, local events. There's just an awful lot going on, and our staff is also juggling and managing a lot to just keep our programs going in a time of such extraordinary uncertainty and challenge. And I know we all step here and try to be as focused and attentive as we can to what's directly in front of us, but we're always doing it in a context of a lot going on, but there is particularly an extra lot going on, and I think it's hard for us sometimes to not acknowledge that that things are, there's a lot of uncertainty around us, and that can cause a lot of distraction and anxiety for anyone, or perhaps all of us, and for the staff that's presenting before us. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Nobody else? Committee reports. Commissioner Trieger?
Thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge, we had our Human Services Commission, which Commissioner Buck sits on with me, and we had a presentation from our partners at St. Vincent de Paul about the recent Egan activation, which was, I forgot there was a little chatter, the longest or one of the longest? The longest activation, 12 consecutive nights. And we got a lot of appreciation from them, and we were able to give it back to our staff. So I know I was one, probably not the only commissioner, texting our administrator and Director Gray over the weekend to provide extra capacity at Lane Event Center towards the end of that activation, because the fewer the sites, especially in a long activation, the harder it is for the volunteers to manage them and for the guests to feel safe and comfortable. And so our ability to so quickly act to open a second building at the Lane Event Center to increase capacity just really helped folks do a better job serving the community that needed that resource, and help the guests be more relaxed and feel safe and secure to do literally the most vulnerable thing there is, which is lay your head down and close your eyes and go to sleep and trust that you're going to be safe while you do it. So just huge appreciation to staff and to our state partners. I think, was it OEM or OHCS that provided that transport of extra support?
Gosh, now
I think it was OEM, right?
I think it was
the
OEM.
emergency
Yeah,
management.
it was a mobile crisis trailer.
Yeah, with lots of supplies and equipment and extra support and help.
Yep.
So just a Herculean effort on the part of community and a lot of volunteers, and appreciation to county staff for being able to meet that moment. Thank you.
Vice Chair Buck?
I'll just add a little bit more on that Human Services Commission. We were talking about what they were seeing as future budgeting. And in that report, they were starting to see, agreement come together for stabilizing the funding that they foresee coming around. Now, that's all taken with a grain of salt, given that there's a potential government shutdown at the end of the week. And we also continue to see changes in the contract language that we're receiving. So although the funding may look like it will stabilize, you still are not sure at what cost in other ways that will materialize. So we will keep a pulse on that. I'm sure we'll eventually have a report back up to the board on what we see, but I think we're pretty much at the whim of the federal government at this point.
Okay.
Chair, I just want to, so Oregon Department of Human Services is the agency that we requested, and they approved our request for the mass care trailer that was provided, which allows for support for about 100 individuals. So things like cots and blankets and medical kits and water. It's a really great resource. And of course, in certain events, it's competitively, there's competition for it, but we made that request and it was provided shortly before the opening around 6 p.m. on Saturday. So thank you to our state partners for that.
I assume this is probably the incident we were in communication about, Commissioner Lovell, this Springfield, over full Springfield?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I can't believe Commissioner Farr didn't speak about it, but we filled our planning commission.
Oh, I had left that for you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, after
2 rounds.
two or 3 panels, we have our planning commission filled now, and I believe we can say the name, but we'll hold it for a little bit. And we had some absolutely amazing applicants.
Could have filled the whole commission with them.
Yeah, we really did. So that was encouraging, because that's a lot of work. And so everybody that signs up for that is signing up for a lot. Well, that's all I have. Do we have any future board assignment requests? Anybody? Pondering? Okay. So it means we have no review assignments. Do we have any other business before we gavel out? We will,
Actually, Chair,
yes, go ahead.
mention our Community Health Council will meet in executive session tonight to discuss some of the cuts that our community health centers are experiencing. Our Community Health Council, it's confusing when the other group called themselves a Community Health Council also, but this is the one, the statutory Community Health Council that's still here. They are the governing body for our community health centers, and they'll be meeting tonight, getting information regarding some of the cuts that will affect services in our health centers. And Eve Gray will be the presenter at that meeting tonight. It is an executive session over at Charnelton at 5:15 tonight.
Okay. Well, at the sound of my gavel, we will be adjourned. Our next meeting will be February 3rd, Tuesday at 9 a.m. here in Harris Hall. We also will be in session Wednesday morning for about 90 minutes roughly.